Silence can be a weapon, or it can be a confession. Most men think going quiet is the strategy. They imagine a few days of no texts, a deleted last scene, and suddenly she'll panic, apologize, and come running back. That's the fantasy. The reality is uglier and quieter. No contact fails when it's used as a bluff. Silence without foundation is just avoidance. It's noise dressed as power. And worst of all, it hands her the map to your weakness. If you want silence to work like gravity, you must build the thing that makes silence meaningful. You must become a man whose absence actually costs her something. Because when you vanish and nothing changes, when her life keeps humming, her ego stays intact and she feels no ripple, no contact collapses into irrelevance. She learns you're optional. She shrugs. And all your patience becomes proof you were never the prize. So what's the difference between silence that punishes and silence that commands? It's not resentment. It's not spite. It's preparation. It's the internal architecture that gives your quiet weight, purpose, visible progress, and a life that makes her absence noticeable. When you disappear into growth, your silence isn't empty. It's full of consequence. When you disappear into boredom, your silence is loud with need. Here's the brutal paradox. To crush her ego without a word, you don't aim at her. You aim at yourself. You stop trying to manufacture her regret and start manufacturing your value. You make your days fuller, your calendar thicker, your voice deeper. You become a man whose life creates questions she can't answer in her head. Where is he? Is he done? Did I lose him? That tension, not your texts, is the engine that turns coldness into craving. Most men treat no contact like a test she must pass. The rarer, wiser move is to treat it like a transformation you must pass through. Before you go quiet, you must prepare the stage. Remove the things that make you predictable, plant the signs of forward motion she can see if she looks, and erect the boundaries she once ignored. This is not playing games, it's cultivating consequence. She will notice the man who no longer waits for her approval and will feel the loss of access to that man, like a sudden draft in a warm room. Make no mistake. Crushing her ego is not cruelty, it's clarity. It's the sound she hears when she realizes she no longer controls your inner weather. Your silence becomes the mirror she cannot break. And when that mirror faces her, when she finally recognizes she lost not a follower, but a force, words will be unnecessary. Regret arrives cleaner when it's unspoken. Power doesn't apologize, ready to learn the exact things you must do before you go silent. The rituals, the proof, the visible upgrades that turn mere absence into devastating consequence. I'll show you the checklist, the mindset, and the subtle moves that make no contact work every single time. Before we start, a quick reminder. My complete Stoic couple course is now live at thestoiccouple.podia.com. If you've been learning from these videos, that's just the surface. Inside the course, we go deeper, mastering attraction, understanding female psychology, and rebuilding your mindset from the inside out. Join once, and you're in for life, with lifetime access to all future courses, books, and new lessons. Plus, you'll be part of our private Stoic community, a brotherhood where men like you grow together in discipline, power, and self-control. It's available in English and Spanish, and you can enroll instantly at thestoiccouple.podia.com or click the link below. Enroll once. Grow forever. Let's begin. Section number 1. Build a life that costs her something. Before silence can ever crush an ego, it must be earned. Silence without consequence is a hollow stunt, a bluff that tells her nothing except you're bored. So the first rule, prepare the stage. Make your life so full, so forward-moving, and so visibly improved that your absence becomes an event, not a convenience. Start with visible progress. This isn't humble bragging. It's evidence. Join a class, launch a project, train a new skill, post one genuine update a week that implies growth. A late-night gym shot with a calendar note, a book you're finishing, a studio clip of something you built. The goal is simple. When she checks up and sees momentum, it creates cognitive friction. Suddenly your silence isn't empty. It's an interruption in a story she once starred in. Next, optimize your schedule. Fill mornings with purpose. Schedule time blocks that are non-negotiable. Work, gym, reading, friends, creation. When your time is governed by structure, you become unpredictable to her in the most attractive way. You won't be available on demand. That scarcity is not manipulation. It's the boundary of a man who values his hours. A man with time that can't be borrowed becomes the one whose attention must be earned. Third, reintroduce magnetic mystery into your presentation. Small details matter. New haircut, a darker jacket, different profile photo that shows your eyes, not your smile. Not for vanity, but for contrast. These are signals. They tell a subconscious story. He's evolving. A changed man is a problem she can't solve with one text. She'll have to look again. That creates the tension you need. Fourth, cut the low-value noise. Remove the things that made you predictable. Constant liking of her posts, instant replies, oversharing. Create friction in small ways. Let your messages be concise but meaningful. Replace filler with quality. When you speak less and mean more, your silence carries weight because your words used to land. Fifth, build a social perimeter that broadcasts your status without shouting. Spend time with friends who add value, men who push you, not placate you. Go out. Be seen in environments that reflect purpose. When your world is full of interesting people and activities, her absence becomes noticeable because she's no longer the center of your orbit. Finally, and most crucial, internalize the reason for all of this. It can't be to punish her ego. It must be to reconstruct yours. Go silent because you've chosen growth, not because you want to manufacture pain. When your silence is a byproduct of becoming, it's permanent. When it's a stunt, it's temporary and obvious. Do this first. Build visible progress, schedule your life, create magnetic mystery, cut noise, and expand your social perimeter. And then go silent. The silence will no longer be empty. It will be an absence that costs her something. The loss of access to a man moving forward. That cost is the currency of regret. When she finally realizes what she's missing, the shock will be clean. No drama, no pleading. Just the quiet recognition that she lost a man who wasn't available to be owned. That's when an ego cracks. Not by argument, but by consequence. Section number 2. What you do publicly and privately before you go quiet. Before silence becomes power, you must build proof, visible and invisible. Because a man who disappears without evidence of progress doesn't create mystery. He creates forgetfulness. What gives silence its gravity is the trail it leaves behind. Small signals of transformation that she can't unsee once she notices. Start with the public rituals. These are the subtle, deliberate changes you let the world witness. A new routine, a sharper look, a steady focus. You don't announce it. You embody it. Maybe you begin sharing early morning progress, not quotes about pain. Maybe your photos shift from nostalgia to direction. City lights, a quiet workspace, a new gym aesthetic. No captions about heartbreak, no emotional crumbs, just quiet evidence. Because power isn't declared, it's displayed. Then there are the private rituals. These are the unseen foundations that make the public ones believable. It's your discipline when no one's watching. Your workouts, your journaling, your cold showers, your silence when you want to speak. Every time you choose restraint over reaction, you sculpt your new energy. And energy can't be faked. You can't post stoicism and still act impulsively behind the screen. Real composure radiates. Fake composure cracks. You must also craft a mental ritual of release. Before you go silent, accept the possibility that she may never come back. That's what makes your detachment real. When your silence doesn't depend on her reaction, it gains purity. The difference between power and performance is simple. Performance waits for applause. Power doesn't need it. Next, plant what I call echo points. These are the moments or symbols that will echo in her mind long after contact ends. The watch you wore, the cologne she associates with you, a book you mentioned. Don't chase nostalgia. Let her memory do the work. When she smells that scent or hears that song, your absence will echo in her body before it reaches her mind. That's psychological imprinting. And it works because it's unspoken. Finally, practice the ritual of emotional neutrality. This is the hardest one. You must strip your silence of expectation. Don't check her stories. Don't analyze her reactions. The man who watches the scoreboard reveals his insecurity. Detach so deeply that your only goal becomes self-respect. Because when your silence is built on inner certainty, not outer hope, she can feel it. And that's what haunts her. These rituals, public, private, emotional, are what turn no contact into art. You're not disappearing out of pain. You're disappearing into purpose. You're creating a void that isn't empty. It's full of improvement, mystery, and power. When she finally senses that your world has continued without her, she won't just question what she lost. She'll question who she became to lose it. And that's when silence starts crushing ego without a single word. Section number 3, how her ego reacts. When you go silent. When you finally go silent, a switch flips in her mind. Not immediately, but inevitably. At first, she feels relief. She thinks she's in control. The absence of your attention feels like victory. But ego, by nature, feeds on confirmation. And when confirmation disappears, it begins to starve. That's when the psychological unraveling begins. See, when you were chasing, you were feeding her validation loop. Every message, every attempt, every emotional check-in gave her proof that she was desired. But when you vanish, that loop breaks. The same woman who once rolled her eyes at your texts now scrolls through your page at midnight. Not because she misses you yet, but because her ego needs reassurance. Do I still have him? Here's where most men break the spell. They break silence too soon. They sense her checking in, posting, hinting, and they respond. But what they don't realize is that these early reactions are not born from affection. They're born from ego hunger. She's not reaching out for you. She's reaching out for her reflection in your eyes. And if you respond too early, you feed the illusion again. You reset her comfort. The Stoic man understands this and waits, because silence works in layers. The first layer triggers curiosity, the second triggers discomfort, the third, obsession. As her ego starves, her emotions take over. She moves from, I wonder if he cares, to, why doesn't he care? To what does he have that made him stop caring? That final question is where desire begins. You see, ego and attraction are enemies that share the same fuel, attention. When you remove it, both start to panic. But while ego tries to regain control, attraction quietly takes its place. She begins to miss the feeling your presence used to give her. Not your words, not your face, but your energy. That calm confidence that once anchored her. This is why your silence must not be reactive. It must be strategic. You're not ignoring her out of anger. You're starving her ego until her emotions become honest again. Until the pride fades and curiosity replaces it. That's when she starts checking, testing, and seeking. The beauty of Stoic silence is that it doesn't argue. It doesn't post quotes. It doesn't prove points. It just exists, steady, untouchable, and impossible to ignore. The longer you hold that frame, the deeper her ego cracks. Because what the ego fears most isn't rejection, it's indifference. When she finally feels invisible in the place she once ruled, she'll crave what she can't command: your attention. And when that happens, the balance shifts completely. The silence that once felt like defeat becomes the sound of control. Section number 4. When she starts feeling what you felt. Every story of distance has a turning point, the quiet moment when the chaser becomes the one being chased. It doesn't happen with words. It happens with weight. The same silence she once ignored now feels heavier with each passing day. The same man she thought she could replace becomes the standard she compares everyone else to. That's the power shift. And it only begins once your silence stops being emotional and becomes energetic. At first, she thought you were bluffing. She assumed you'd fold, break the quiet, and fall back into her rhythm. She mistook your composure for confusion, your stillness for sadness. But as days stretch into weeks, the reality sets in. You didn't pause to get her back. You paused to rebuild yourself, and that realization hits her where ego turns fragile. Because ego expects reaction. It feeds on it. When she senses that you're no longer emotionally orbiting her, it feels like freefall. Suddenly, she's the one checking the clock, waiting for a message, replaying the past. She starts remembering the moments that once made her feel seen, not because she misses the attention, but because she misses the reflection of herself she saw through your admiration. Without it, her sense of control begins to fade. That's when confusion becomes craving. It's not about wanting you. It's about needing to understand why you're no longer affected. The emotional tables turn quietly. The man she thought would collapse in her absence is now expanding. He looks sharper, moves differently, posts less, but says more. Your energy changes shape, and that difference creates an emotional contrast that she can't look away from. This is why silence works, not as punishment, but as evolution. It creates distance, yes, but also a mirror. The same emptiness she once handed you now stares back at her. And in that silence, she begins to feel what you once felt. The ache of uncertainty, the weight of not knowing, the quiet fear that maybe she misjudged your value. That's the emotional reversal. The shift from ego-driven certainty to emotional vulnerability. The power she once held starts dissolving. Not because you took it, but because you stopped giving it. She begins to realize that while she was busy testing your patience, you were mastering your peace. And here's the poetic irony. When you stop needing her to feel powerful, that's when she starts needing your presence to feel stable. That's when your silence transforms from absence to dominance. When every second you don't reach out amplifies your worth. The man she once took for granted becomes the one her thoughts orbit. Not because you demanded her attention, but because you reclaimed your energy. That's the shift every Stoic man must reach. From being emotionally replaced to being emotionally remembered. Section number 5. When regret finally hits her. Regret doesn't hit all at once. It creeps in quietly, disguised as curiosity. A late-night scroll through old messages. A glance at your profile. A thought that she quickly pushes away until it comes back stronger the next day. That's the beginning of the ego collapse. At first, she'll convince herself she's fine. She'll tell her friends, "I just needed space." She'll post things that scream independence. But behind that defiance, something subtle begins to shift. Your silence starts echoing. Not the silence of a man who's hurt, but the silence of a man who's healed. She can feel that difference. even without a word from you. And that difference is what breaks her. You see, an ego can survive rejection. It can even survive arguments, closure, or emotional chaos. But what it can't survive is irrelevance. When she realizes her absence didn't slow your life down, when she sees you moving forward, calm, grounded, unbothered, her mind can't process it. Because ego feeds on evidence. And now there's none left. Every sign of your growth, your focus, your changes, your silence, becomes a mirror she can't look away from. It doesn't just remind her of you. It reminds her of the part of herself she lost when she lost your respect. That's the quiet agony of regret. Not missing you, but missing who she was when you valued her. She'll try to regain balance by testing you. A story view, a random text, a memory disguised as a joke. But these aren't acts of affection. They're survival instincts. She's trying to measure your reaction to see if the door is still open, because if you respond with emotion, she regains the upper hand. But if you stay composed, polite, brief, her ego collapses further. She's no longer sure what you feel. And uncertainty, to an ego, is torment. This is where your silence becomes weaponized, not through manipulation, but through mastery. You've stopped engaging in emotional warfare. You've stopped defending yourself, stopped explaining, stopped proving. That lack of validation becomes the emotional vacuum that pulls her in. The man she once thought she could control has disappeared, and in his place stands someone unrecognizable, calm, grounded, distant. That's when it hits her. The late-night wave of regret that has no outlet. The sudden realization that she's no longer the center of your world, and worse, that she can't get back into it. She might even break her pride and reach out, not because she loves you, but because she can't stand the silence anymore. But that's not your cue to reply. It's your confirmation that no contact worked, that her ego has shattered in the one way words never could. Because when silence becomes your language, regret becomes her reply. Section number 6, becoming the man. She never expected you to become. Silence breaks men who wait, but it builds men who evolve. When you step away from the noise, you finally start hearing yourself again. The voices of doubt, the questions of worth, the shadows of rejection, they all start to fade as something stronger begins to form underneath. Discipline. This is the rebuild phase, and it's where your real power begins. Because by now, her ego is cracking, her control is fading, and her curiosity is burning. But your attention, it's no longer waiting. It's working. Every morning you wake up early, every rep in the gym, every focused hour you spend building your goals. Those aren't just actions, they're statements. You're saying, I'm not who I was when you left. You're no longer chasing peace. You're creating it. This is the paradox of growth. When you stop needing her validation, you become the version of yourself she secretly hoped you'd one day become. And the irony is, she can't have him anymore. You become the man she would now chase, but who no longer needs to be chased. And here's what most men don't realize. No contact isn't just silence. It's space. Space for rebirth. Space for evolution. If you spend that time obsessing over what she's thinking, you waste the most powerful period of your life. But if you use it to build, to refine your presence, your purpose, your emotional control, you create something rare. A man who isn't moved by memory. You begin to understand that attraction isn't about effort, it's about energy. And your energy changes the moment your purpose becomes bigger than her approval. When your life moves forward with direction, your silence becomes magnetic. Not because you're playing a game, but because your focus radiates peace. That's what makes her crave you again. Not the old you, but the new you she helped create by underestimating you. The man who learned through pain that his emotions are his kingdom and his time is sacred. This is when your silence stops being strategy and becomes standard. It's no longer something you do. It's who you are. Calm, confident, deliberate. You don't react to noise. You observe it. You don't chase validation. You generate it. You don't explain your worth. You embody it. And when she sees that, when she realizes you're no longer the man waiting for her message, the regret deepens. Not because she lost love, but because she lost access to the version of you she once dismissed. This is the silent reward of discipline. The world, and she, now sees what you became in her absence. You didn't just go quiet. You rose. Section number 7. When she comes back and you no longer need her to, she will come back. Maybe not with flowers, maybe not with words that match the damage, but she'll return, drawn by the same silence that once pushed her away. It could be a text that pretends to be casual, or a story reaction that carries a hidden question. It could be months later, when she sees you again and feels that sudden pressure in her chest, the realization that your eyes no longer seek hers. That moment is the proof, not of revenge, but of evolution. Because when you no longer need her return, you've already won. The truth most men never learn is this. The real victory of no contact isn't getting her back. It's outgrowing the version of yourself that once needed her. The man who begged for validation has disappeared. In his place stands someone she can't predict, can't manipulate, can't emotionally own. That's the paradox of power. When you stop chasing what left, it begins to chase what you've become. She'll feel it instantly. The difference in your voice, your posture, your energy. You're not colder, you're calmer. You're not bitter, you're balanced. And that composure, that effortless presence, hits harder than any comeback message ever could. Because deep down, she remembers the man who once reacted to her silence. And now she's facing the man who commands it. When she tries to re-enter your life, she's not testing you. She's testing herself. She wants to know if she still holds the same power over you. But when she senses the emotional distance, the unbothered stillness, the quiet certainty in your tone, she realizes the truth. She doesn't. That's when her ego finally dissolves. She no longer sees you as the man who needed her attention. She sees you as the man who could have had her again, but chose peace instead. And that choice cuts deeper than silence ever could. This is the final stage of mastery. When you realize that no contact was never about her. It was about you. About reclaiming your power, resetting your energy, and rising into a version of yourself she can admire from afar, but never possess again. Because the man who's learned to be silent doesn't use words to prove worth. He uses results. He doesn't chase closure, he becomes it. So when she comes back, don't treat it as a win. Treat it as a mirror, reflecting how far you've risen above the noise. You didn't ignore her to hurt her. You went silent to hear yourself, and now that silence speaks louder than love ever did. Every man learns, eventually, that silence isn't the absence of power. It's the proof of it. You don't destroy her ego by shouting, explaining, or begging to be understood. You do it by living in such a way that your absence has weight. You crush it by rebuilding yourself quietly until your life speaks the truth your words once tried to say. That's the essence of no contact. It's not a punishment. It's purification. It's the discipline of stepping back, not to make her miss you, but to remember yourself. The man who begs loses himself. The man who withdraws to grow finds himself again. And the man who returns to peace becomes untouchable. Because one day she will realize what your silence really meant. It wasn't anger. It wasn't ego. It was closure without words. It was strength without noise. It was you finally understanding that power doesn't come from being heard. It comes from being felt. When you reach that point, you no longer measure victory by whether she comes back. You measure it by how calm you've become, by how little her chaos can move you, by how peaceful it feels to let things fall without trying to catch them. That's when she starts to feel everything you stopped saying, every message you didn't send, every word you decided wasn't worth your peace. And in that moment, when she finally feels your silence, she'll realize something that will echo for years. You were never the one who lost control. You were the one who chose not to play. That's what makes your silence so powerful. It's not the sound of goodbye. It's the sound of rebirth. So if you're watching this right now and you feel that pull to text, to explain, to prove, don't. Instead, take that energy and invest it in yourself. Work on your purpose, rebuild your body, expand your mind. Because the version of you that emerges from silence is the one who never needs to chase again. And when she finally sees that man, calm, grounded, unbothered, she'll realize that your silence wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of hers. If this message hit you deeply, subscribe now and join the Stoic Couple channel. Because here, we don't chase emotions, we master them. Before you go, remember, if you're ready to master yourself and the dating game, my full Stoic Couple course is waiting at thestoiccouple.podia.com. Join once and you're in for life, with lifetime access to every future lesson, series, and book. Start your journey now, because growth doesn't wait.